so that we can have it. We can have it to put up on the Bez Hashem on YouTube, so we can share it with other people as well. If anyone has any questions during the class, please feel free to ask any questions that pertain to what we're talking about. And if you have any other questions towards the end, we can take a question and answer session. Okay, so let's begin. So the title of these next few shiurim be'ezat Hashem is preparing for Rosh Hashanah. So the first question is, we have to understand what it means, Rosh Hashanah. So we put in the title, we put Judgment Day. But let's translate the word. Let's translate the word Rosh Hashana. So what does Rosh mean? If anyone had to translate, if anyone wants to give a translation for the word Rosh. Okay, so Rosh, we know means head, literally means the head. Hashana means the year. So the translation is Rosh Hashana, the head of the year. If you wanted to say a new year, you would say Shana Hadasha. Hadasha means
the meeting.
Rosh Hashanah doesn't mean New Year. Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year.
Brownfield funds? Yes.
So how are we to understand this?
Chris.
Just make sure everybody is on mute. Thank you. Again, if you have a question, you can ask it. Sure. So how do we understand this? Why is it called Rosh Hashanah and not Shana Chadash? So I was once learning, and one of my Rebbeim said that the reason why it's called Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, is because we hope that at least on Rosh Hashanah, a person is going to use his head. That most times of the year, most people are not using their heads. They're actually being tails, so to speak, being the tails. Right? We have in this week's parasha Kitavo, it says that we should be l'rosh v'lo l'zanav. We should be a head and not a tail. What's a head? A head is a thinking person, a person who thinks, uses his head. A tail is a follower. Tail follows wherever the body goes, right? The head is at the sides where the body's going to go. We hope and we pray that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be able to use our heads. The Ben Ish Hai says a very interesting story. A mashal that really explains how we act all year. There was once a rich man who owned a big property. And on his property, he had the house. And on the side of the house, he had a ladder going up to the roof. And he had a couple of his nephews coming over. So he told his servant, he said to his servant, listen, I need you to take off the ladder. I don't want my nephews climbing up to the roof and then whatever. I don't want it. Take off the ladder. So the servant said, yes, Adonim, yes, my master, right away. He went and he started taking off the ladder. How he took off the ladder? He started from the bottom and he went up. All right, so he stood on top and he took off rung after rung after rung, and then he ended up all the way on the roof. And now he's screaming down and he's telling his master, Adoni, my master, I need help. What'd you do? How'd you get stuck on top there? He said, I did what you told me. I took off the ladder. Master said, listen, when you take off the ladder, you start from the top and you go down. He said, Adoni, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. Next time, that's what I'm going to do. No, they got some rope. And he scaled on the side of their house and he came down. It was not too long after, and the master told his servant, he said to him, "Listen, I have over here on the edge of my property a well, and with a ladder that goes down there. I don't want a ladder down there. I don't want the kids trying to climb down there. I want a ladder out. I don't want anyone going walking down there. Dangerous. Take it out." Servant said yes. And in his mind, he says, "Ah, I remember last time I started from the bottom up and I got stuck. My master told me start from the top and go down." So he did it again. He started from the top and he took rung after rung off until he ended up in the well and he had no way out. So he screamed, "Adoni, my master!" The master and all his family, everybody, all the people on the property come and say, "What happened?" He says, I did what you told me. Last time you told me to start from the top and go down. That's what I did." They said to him, "Such a foolish guy. It's not that you go from the top down or the down up. You have to look where you're starting from. And you have to look where you're going. And when you look where you're starting from and where you're going, you're going to know how to do it." That's what it means to be a Rosh, to be ahead, to understand where we're going, to understand what we're doing, and do it properly. Right? You have sometimes, you have people, I give this example many times, but you have people say they have a Sheva Brachot, right? And the uncle or the cousin or someone who's very close to the family is at the Sheva Brachot. And they tell the uncle, speak, say a couple of words of Torah. And he says, "Oh, no, I didn't prepare anything." I didn't prepare anything. You're the uncle. You're most likely going to get asked to speak. You're supposed to use your head in advance. You're supposed to prepare. You're supposed to think. This is the idea of why Pinchas calls Rosh Hashanah the time that we're supposed to use our head. In fact, when we come to the Simanim, the Seder Rosh Hashanah, which Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to look at some of the halachot now at the Seder Rosh Hashanah. One of them is we eat the Rosh Keves, the head of the lamb, and get lamb, maybe head of the chicken, head of the fish, depending on if you eat fish or not. But we would say in it, Rosh that we should be a head, not a tail. The truth is, throughout the year, many people act like the tail, right? They go on social media, somebody says something, somebody did something, and everyone follows it. Sometimes it's good hacks. Sometimes it don't make any sense, but someone said, so I have to do it. I have to follow. I have to read this guy's feed, that guy's feed. I have to read this guy's post, that guy's post. And it's just, we're tails. We're just following what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is saying. And we get lost and we don't use our heads, unfortunately. And so, as Hashem, we here who've come on and are listening to this have decided to get ahead by using our heads and preparing for Rosh Hashanah. So the makeup of this year will be we'll try to start with the Davar Machshava, a thought on Rosh Hashanah, and then we'll go into some halachot of Rosh Hashanah, and then we will end off with another thought. So this way we'll sandwich the halachot with some machshava, some hashkafa, some thoughts and mindsets of how to prepare for Rosh Hashanah. We're now going to move over to the halakha section of Rosh Hashanah. Now, the class is really geared for ladies, for the woman. So it's going to be halachot that really pertain to the woman for Rosh Hashanah. And one of those areas of Rosh Hashanah is the food that we eat on the night of Rosh Hashanah. Right? At least in most households, the women are still in charge of the kitchen, still in charge of preparing the food. Yes, the husband should be helping. They are helping. But in the end of the day, usually the achrayut is on the responsibility is on the woman. So it's important to know what we need to have on the table and how to do the process of the Seder of Rosh Hashanah. Okay. The first thing to know is there are two Gemarot. There are two Gemaras in two places that tell us the idea of having these foods, these special foods, like the pomegranate, the rimon, the anor, right, that we have, and the black-eyed peas and the leeks, and we'll go through each one. But the Gemara says the reason why we want to have these, as there's simanim, there are signs, allusions to a good year. And if you read the Hiratzons that we have in the prayer book, each one says what the prayer is for, what the food is, what the name of the food is similar to, and it's a prayer that these things should come to fruition this year. But the Gemara tells us two different versions of how you're supposed to do it. One Gemara says you need to eat it. One Gemara says you need to look at it. So which way do we go? Do you have to eat it, or do you have to look at it? So the halacha tells us as follows. We're going to read the halacha. Halacha says that the custom of all Jews is by the 2 nights of Rosh Hashanah to eat the special simanim that are a remez, an illusion that they symbolize the siman tov, a good siman, l'chol yemot Hashanah, for all the years, for all the days of the year. Now, but if someone cannot eat those foods, he could look at them and he can say, or she can say, the hiratzon. So number one halacha, yes, you need to have these simanim. You need to have these special foods. But if a person cannot eat it, they can look at it and say the hiratzon, and that is not a problem at all. Now, there is a further discussion on halacha. Let's say I can't get the pomegranate, right? Let's say I can't get the pomegranate. There's no pomegranates this year. Example. Can I still say the hiratzon or not? Definitely you cannot say the bracha on the fruit because you don't have the fruit. But can I say the hiratzon even if I don't have the pomegranate with me? The Kaf Haim Sofer, he writes that one could, because the hiratzon is just a prayer. So even if you don't have it, you can still say the prayer. The Maran Nishon Tzion, that's Chacham Ovadia Yosef, he writes that you don't necessarily have to say it during the time of the Simanim, meaning you could say a prayer at any time. What's the point of saying it at the night if you don't have the fruits, if you're supposed to have the fruits in front of you? So the idea is that you should try having those special foods in front of us, but if you can't eat it, it's okay. You can just look at it and say the hiratzon. If you can't get the fruit either, then according to the Kaf Haim Sofer, you can say the hiratzon as a prayer on the side. Now, what would be some reasons you couldn't that you would want to look at something rather than eating it? Number one, you don't like it. I know we all grew up, say in my own parents' house. You know, which kid really likes black-eyed beans, right? Nobody, I didn't like it, but my parents made sure we ate it. So technically, we didn't have to eat it. We can just look at it and say the hiratzon. Right, the kids a lot of times get scared of the dates, right? The sweet dates that taste so good, but the kids get scared of them. They think it looks like cockroaches or whatnot. So yeah, you don't have to make a whole scene of it. Maybe if you want to enforce them to eat some fruit, you can try to enforce it gently. But if it's going to be a whole scene, okay, just say hiratzon by looking on the fruit and so forth and so on with all the foods. Also, if a person has an allergy, something has shalom, if a person has an allergy. They can just look at it and they say hiratzon. And now another big one. The third really reason, to my mind, why a person wouldn't be able to eat it is some of these vegetables and fruits we're going to mention require bug checking. Okay, and we'll mention which foods are that in a moment. And if something requires bug checking and they're not checked for bugs properly, then definitely you should not be eating them. Never, not throughout the whole year. It's an isser to eat something that needs to be checked properly and it's not checked. You cannot eat it. It's a complete isser. You're eating a insect, which is asur min Torah, has 5 lavim, 5 negative prohibitions. So we don't eat them. So if you have such a case, you went to someone's house or you weren't able to prepare it either, and it has bugs on it, so then you could tell the people at the table this hasn't been kasher, but we can look at it and we can say the hiratzon. So it's actually happened a couple of years ago. We went some for Rosh Hashanah, and I had on the table, I think it was the leeks. The leeks have to be checked, and it was the leeks or the spinach, and they have to be checked for bugs. And the person did not know, and they put it on the table, and I had to decide: should I say, should I not say? And I said, listen, Rosh Hashanah, everybody wants to do the good thing. You all want to get off on the right foot. So we said that we have it on the table. We're going to say the hiratzon, but we're not going to eat it because it's a problem with the bugs. And everybody was fine. Even the person who put it out was thanking us for mentioning it and telling them they didn't know, and they definitely didn't want to make an avirah on Rosh Hashanah. So they were happy that they didn't have to eat it. It didn't have to be over an avera, and everybody was safe. You just look at it and you say yihi. That's all. Okay. Now, what are the proper procedure? What is the proper procedure of how to do the simanim? First of all, proper procedure is you come home, and the husband has, and the man, the people who are leading the kiddush. A woman can also say kiddush if there's no man around. The woman, the wife, or anybody in the house can say kiddush as long as they're above bar or bat mitzvah. They can say the kiddush, and there is in a lot of the prayer books, there's a lot of extra prayers on the night of Rosh Hashanah to say before Kiddush. It's good to do them. It's not required, but it's highly recommended. And then you make the Kiddush. After Kiddush, which is the holiday Kiddush for Rosh Hashanah, you sit down and you wash your hands for bread. You sit down and you eat a bread. Now, this is not a halacha only for Rosh Hashanah. It's a halacha, I'm going to say it's for the whole year. Every time you sit down, you make an atilat yadayim. Every time you sit down after making atilat yadayim, you're going to break bread. You have to eat a kazayit of bread within 7.5 minutes. Kazayit of bread is 27 grams. You have to eat 27 grams within 7.5 minutes in order to make a birkat hamazon afterwards. If you eat 20 grams within 7.5 minutes, and then you eat 7 grams after the 7.5 minutes, it does not combine. It has to be within the first 7.5 minutes once you start eating bread. 27 grams have to be eaten. Now, in order to wash your hands with the bracha of al natilat yadayim, you have to eat a total, I believe it's a little bit more than 54 grams, 52 grams. So around 52 grams, 54 grams, you have to eat that in order to wash your hands with the bracha of al natilat yadayim. So if you're not planning to eat that much, you're not allowed to say the bracha of al natilat yadayim. In order to make a bracha of al natilat yadayim, you have to plan to eat at least 54 grams, 52 grams of bread. Okay? Once you start eating bread, you need to eat the 27 grams within 7.5 minutes in order to make a birkat hamazon. Okay, this is all year round. So come Rosh Hashanah, you wash your hands, you eat bread, you eat the kazayit of bread, 27 grams within the first 7.5 minutes. And now you start the seder of Rosh Hashanah. Now you're going to take the fruits on the table, the fruits and the vegetables that you prepared on the table, and now you begin the seder. The first thing that we do is we take a temarim. We take the dates. The dates and the shivat minim and the 7 special species of that grow in Eretz Yisrael. The dates is one of the top ones. And it's the first one we eat. The way we do it, we take it, we make a bracha, borei peri ha'etz. And everyone can make their own bracha if they want. Okay, so everybody at the table can make their own bracha. Everyone can answer amen. If they want, one person can say the balabayit, can say borei peri ha'etz, and everyone can answer amen. They can be yotzei through him. Usually, most places, when it comes to the brachot of fruit and stuff like that, everyone makes their own, and that's fine. So you take one tamar, take one date and you make boda priya eights and you eat it. Usually the dates are pretty small, so you can just eat one whole one. And then you look in the prayer book and you say the hiratzon, and you would say the hiratzon, sheitmu oyevenu v'sanenu v'chol makshera atenu. Yitmu from the lashon of tamar, and we're getting rid of all of our problems. When the enemies of God meet their end, and that's what we say when it comes to the dates. Okay, so after hamotzi, you eat the dates. Now, obviously, dates is one of those fruits that you have to check for bugs. You would have to open it up. You have to take a look inside of it to see if there are any of the bugs inside there. I'm not an expert in bug checking. In the group, if you're in the WhatsApp group, my wife is there. Everyone can reach out to her if they have any questions of the bug checking. Baruch Hashem, she took a course by Rabbi Gadayev once, and Baruch Hashem, she is our official bug checker at home, so she can give anyone who has any questions. We'll try to find from the Start K, they have a guide of how to check the simanim for Rosh Hashanah. We'll try to get that out to people as well, so everyone can have it and know how to look. The next thing that we take is known as rubaya, and rubaya is the black-eyed peas. Okay? Now, black-eyed peas, we do not make any bracha on it. Why is that? Because the beans are cooked, and cooked foods never get a bracha during a seudah. Because we already made hamotzi, and any cooked dishes don't get a bracha during a meal. So cooked beans is part of a meal, therefore no bracha on that. You just say the hiratzon. Okay? And the hiratzon may be the will that our merits be multiplied and that you grant us a good heart. Hiratzon shirbu, right? Rubaya, and then you have the lashon of yirbu, that is the connection. Rubaya and ribui, and it should multiply. The next thing that we eat is karti. Karti is leeks. So leeks also need to be checked. You have to cut them open. You have to check, see if there are any bugs in there. The way we eat the leeks, because the leeks are a little bit sometimes very sharp. We're not supposed to eat really sharp stuff from Rosh Hashanah. So what we do is we cook the leeks. The leeks are cooked, and then you eat it. They come sweeter, and that's what you use on Rosh Hashanah night. Cook leeks, and they have to be checked beforehand. And you would say the lashon sheikritu oyevenu, right? So it's called karti. So you say sheikritu oyevenu, which literally means that our enemies should be cut off, karet, from to be cut off, and that's the connection over there. We want to get rid of our enemies, so we eat the leek. The next thing that we eat is silka. Okay, now silka, there's really a machloket between almost everybody and Chacham Ovadia. Now, Chacham Ovadia Yosef, who we go like, most of us go like, right? The Yalkut Yosef, which is based on their father's teaching, Chacham Ovadia Yosef's teaching, he understands and translates the word silka as spinach. Now, many of us may not be familiar with spinach on a Rosh Hashanah Seder table. That's because most others translate silka as beets. As beets. Most people know that Rosh Hashanah, they eat the beets. I forgot how it's pronounced in Bukharian, but it has a nice language to it. But silka, beets, is what most people use. Do you have to use spinach? It's highly recommended to use spinach instead of the beets, as we follow Chacham Ovadia and everything that we do. Personally, at my house, we use both, just because we used to have a minhag to eat the beets. Growing up at my father's house, we always ate beets, and there's nothing wrong with eating more vegetables at Rosh Hashanah Seder. There's nothing wrong with adding. So we can eat the spinach and the beets, and there's not a problem. If a person doesn't have the spinach, you could rely on on always using beets that we did throughout all those years. But again, preferable to use the spinach. Spinach, though, requires checking. Okay, you can buy them pre-checked from some of the kosher grocery stores. They have them pre-checked, or you can check them yourself if you know how to check them. Okay, and the connection is silka, and we say We say the lashon sheistaliku oyevenu, which means that they should disappear. Our enemies and our problems should all disappear. All right. The next thing after that we eat is kara. Kara is squash. So this is your butternut squash. Most Bukharian families had butternut squash on the night of the Rosh Hashanah Seder, kudu, that they would eat, if I pronounce correctly. And those usually don't require checking. So that is what you would use for that. And the squash being kara, so we say the lashon shetikra roa gazar dinenu, which means from the lashon of like kriyat yamsuf, right, like splitting the sea. May he tore up our any of our decrees, any bad decrees that are against us should be torn up, and we should have good merits presented before Hashem. Okay, that's kara, that's squash, and the next siman that we eat is rimon, and that is the anor, that is the pomegranate, and we obviously say that we should be milaim mitzvot kirimon. We should be filled with mitzvot like a rimon. The rimon should be sweet. You see it's sour, you could just look at it and say the hiratzon. You shouldn't eat a sour rimon, a sour pomegranate. So you should check it. If it's not sweet, you shouldn't eat it. Just look at it and say the hiratzon. Now, some people have a minhag of not to eat the rimon on the first night because they say that they want to keep the rimon as a shechianu fruit for the second night to make kiddush with the shechianu on the second night. Personally, I'm not nohig that way. I not do it that way. We eat rimon on the 2 nights because the halacha is that you can make a shechianu on the second night kiddush even without a new fruit or without a new beged. If you have one, it's good, but you don't need it. And there's another problem with whether a rimon you can actually say shechianu on it, because there are many stores in New York today that you can find pomegranates throughout the whole year. So there's not really a season for it as it was in the past. So maybe you don't say a shechianu on it. So therefore, we're knowing to eat the pomegranate on both nights, and we would say that you eat that again, if it's sour, you would just say the hiratzon. You wouldn't have to eat it. The thing next that we take is the tapua, is the apple. Now, there are 2 minhagim when it comes to the apple. Everyone knows the one that's related to the song, right? You dip the apple in the honey, Shana Tova, Metuka, have a happy, sweet New Year. And that is what most Klal Yisrael does. Most Jews do that. However, interesting to note that the Ben Ish Chai, he held that we should not be using honey on Rosh Hashanah. His reason for that being is that honey is more of din, more judgment. So he did not recommend dipping the apple in the honey. He had a minhag of cooking apple in the sugar. So he would take sugar and then sugar water, and then you cook an apple in the sugar water, and he would eat the apple in the sugar. Does a person have to be knowing this way? Does a person have to act this way? It's probably better to do it that way, Kabbalistically. But if a person wants to use the honey, there's plenty of what to rely on to use the honey, and the person can keep the minhag of using the honey. Right? Even the Shulchan Aruch said to use the honey on Rosh Hashanah. But if a person wants to follow the Ben Ish Chai, he could do that. Some places, for a couple of years at home, we did both. We did both the honey and the sugar. And then we have the Rosh Keves, the head of the lamb, right? And this is the part where we say that we should be LeRosh V'lo Zanav. We should be a head and not a tail. All right, so they actually sell head of lamb. Can you use tongue? Tongue is in the head. Cheeks is in the head, so it should be okay. If the person doesn't have the tongue or cheeks or one of these, so he could or she could use a head of a chicken. Some people use head of a fish. Now, fish, do people eat fish in Rosh Hashanah or not? Many years I was to sit with my brother-in-law, Rabbi Avner, and he wouldn't eat fish, and I would eat fish. So the people who don't eat fish, Rosh Hashanah, they're worried that there's one place in the Torah, in Tanakh, not actually in the Torah, but in Nach, where it says the word dag, fish, with da'aga, with an aleph, which sounds like worry, and we don't want to worry on Rosh Hashanah. So some people have a minhag of not eating the fish. However, many others would say, on the contrary, fish are very reproduce a lot, and they have a lot of hatzlacha, and they don't have ayin hara on them, and therefore you should eat fish. And there's even a yehid atzon that some have to say when they have a fish on Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, if you have fish and meat, you have to separate them. You have to wash your hands a little bit in between. You should eat a little salad and drink something going between the fish and the meat, and that's fine. You can have a salad and then continue with the meat and say the hiratzon on the Rosh Kevis afterwards as well. The minhag is to put, and those are most of the simanim. There are two more simanim that people do. Some people eat etrog, and especially hiratzon for the etrog. If anyone wants to know the hiratzon for the fish, or the hiratzon, the prayer for the etrog, or even for the people who have the minhag of eating the lungs, the meat of a lung. So we have a minhag of putting the meat of a lung in honey and eating it. There's a hiratzon for that as well. If anyone's interested in what the hiratzon is, please reach out and we will send it to you. And that is most of the simanim that people eat. I know Ashkenazim have carrots and have other things. If a person wanted to add them on, technically you could. There is no limit to the simanim, but these are the ones Hazal had told us, Chachamim told us to do, and these are the ones we mostly do. Just a couple of more ideas regarding this. Number one, we don't eat nuts on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so something that we don't eat nuts. And even if they're ground nuts, most people have a minhag to stay away from ground nuts as well. Some people allow ground nuts, but if it's in a cake or something like that, but most people are careful not to even eat ground nuts. The egos has the gematria of chait, of the sin, and we don't want that. The last idea, last halakha, before we go for our second thought of the night, is bread in honey. So the minhag is to put bread in honey when through from Rosh Hashanah all the way to Shmini Atzeret. Every time we sit down to the meal, we would dip the bread into honey. Important note that even though you're dipping the bread into honey, according to Kabbalah, you should still be dipping it into the salt first. So you dip it into the salt, and the way you should dip it, usually the Kabbalah tells us to dip it in 3 times. You don't have to dip it in far inside, just a little tap, 1, 2, 3, and then you can go and dip it into the honey. But you shouldn't just dip it into the honey. It should be dipped into salt first. According to the Ben Ish Chai, who says to stay away from honey in Rosh Hashanah, so then his minhag would have been to use sugar. You can dip it into sugar. So you would dip it into salt and then into the sugar. Technically, a person can do that as well. That is a recommended practice. Okay, so those were the halachot about the Seder of Rosh Hashanah. If anyone have any questions, you can ask on that.
Yeah, one question. What does honey have to do with din?
What does honey have to do with?
Din.
With din. Okay, so Kabbalistically, they say it's related to that. Exactly how that works, I'm not sure. So here he writes in the Yalkut Yosef, honey represents the realm of Gevurah, where strict punishment is the rule. Whereas in Rosh Hashanah, we want to emphasize the realm of mercy and forgiveness. Therefore, the Ben Ish Chai concludes that it should be cooked in sugar. So it doesn't explain what honey has to do with din, but that it does have to do with din, and that's why there are those who want to stay away from it. Again, if the minhag in your family was always to use honey, you have what to rely on. The Shulchan Aruch says to use honey, so you can stick with the honey. If people want to move over to sugar, they could do that. Growing up, my father one year did sugar, one day he did honey. I couldn't keep track which year was going which way. All right, let's. Is that okay? That answered your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to our last machshava, our last thought for today. So the question is as follows: Everyone wants to be successful. We want to use Chodesh Elul. We want to use Chodesh Elul to get to Rosh Hashanah successfully, to be zocheh into another year of life, a good life. I will tell you, just take a look at the past year. There were some people who didn't make it through, some people that we know. So how do we guarantee ourselves to be successful? So the question is, how can a person be successful? Our Rosh Yeshiva, Rav eventually, he once explained that to be successful, you have to be successful, which means success leads to success. How do we understand that? Very simple. It's called small steps, right? If you are successful in a small area, that will now give you the boost to be more successful in something a little harder, in something a little higher. But if you're never successful in one area, you're never going to have the boost, the drive, or the confidence to be successful in any area, right? For example, let's think, we've all had this, right? We have our children, they get this big puzzle, 1,000 piece, right? You take a look at the 1,000 pieces, and you can give up. There's no way I can build this. 5,000 pieces, a 3D puzzle, whatever puzzle it is. It's too much. I'm going to do this. Or you can say, hold on. Let me look at the picture, let me look at the image, and let me find somewhere to start with. And you start with that one area, and eventually, if the toddlers are not taking and stealing the pieces, you'll have all the pieces and you put them into place, and you'll finish the puzzle. It's the same idea in life. You know, a lot of times you can come into work and you have all these different demands on you and all these different things that need to happen. A successful person is someone who knows, okay, I have to start somewhere. I have to know how to prioritize. I have to know what goes first, what goes second, but I have to start somewhere. I'll start somewhere, I'll accomplish one goal, and then I'll move on to my next goal, and I move on to my next, and I move on to my next. In fact, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, all of our Gedolim say the same thing. Take a Kabbalah. Take something new upon yourself. But what's the new thing to take? Once the Mashgiach Chevron Yeshiva, he told the students in the month of Elul, it's time to take a Kabbalah. It's time to take something upon yourselves. But take something very, very small. And then come to me. And one of the Talmidim came to him and said, Rabbi, I found something very small to do. So Rav Chasman said to him, Mashgiach Chevron Yeshiva said to him, very good. Now, if you want to be successful, split that commitment in half and only do half of it. Meaning, you really need to take baby steps to be accomplished. Because you can't jump. Everyone wants to have, for example, I want to make sure to have Kavanah in Shmona Esrei, right? In the whole Shmona Esrei. That's not the way to do it. The Kabbalah should be, I should have Kavanah in the first bracha, in the first line of the first bracha, if need be. In the first 3 words, something small. Because if you do 1 year something small, and now the next year you're able to bump it up. I'll have 2 brachot that I'll focus on. And then 3. But it has to start somewhere and it has to start small. We can't expect to jump to the top of the ladder, right? The story in the beginning. You need to know how to climb the ladder. You need to know how to use your head, how to be successful. A person has to look step by step. You know, Rabbi Twersky, Rav Avram J. Twersky, who was also a doctor, a psychiatrist, he recounted that he had a friend who would keep track of how many days he was been sober. And the night before he passed away, he wrote down that he was sober for 16,472 days. And Rav Twersky explained, you know how this man did it? He didn't look at it as that I have to be sober for the rest of my life. Rather, he looked at it as that I have to be sober for 1 day. If I can be sober for 1 day, then I accomplished my goal. If I did 1 day, I can do the next 1 day. But it's just 1 day. But if a person gets bogged down with the future, or he doesn't even know what the future is going to bring, then of course he can't move. He'll become paralyzed because there's so many worries and so many variables and so many factors you can't imagine. If you start thinking, you don't know how you're going to turn, which way you're going to go. person really has to know how to climb that ladder, how to take those baby steps, how to look at one day at a time. So right now, we have about 20 something days left to Elul. So the question is how we're going to use those 20 something days. The way we're supposed to use it is taking one day at a time. Baruch Hashem, there's so many resources out there that a person can get on, can look at, can listen to, can learn. There's Svarim in every language. A person just has to take the time to spend a few minutes climbing in their Avodat Hashem step by step. There is no way to skip the steps. Right? There's a lot of times I meet guys that say they never learned in yeshiva or anything. They want to learn Kabbalah. Baruch Hashem, you want to learn Kabbalah. But there's steps to get there. There's steps to get everywhere you need to get in life. And the smart person, the person who has their head on their shoulders, is the person who takes it one step at a time and realizing that there's a ladder that they need to climb. And if they climb one step successfully, they're guaranteed to climb the next step and the next step successfully. If there are any questions, I can take them now. Any questions at all related to what we spoke about, or any questions in general regarding Rosh Hashanah, we can take them at this time. Okay, if nobody has any questions, then I wish everybody a good night, and thank you for joining us. Kol tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just give them a